Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Good to everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. Tane, what have you put into your basket of knowledge since we last spoke?
I think something I reflected on over the last 2 weeks. I've been pretty busy with data collection and trying to get my summer research done alongside trying to take up new opportunities leading into the year. But I think something I've reflected on as I've started taking on these roles is, like having professional development and trying to develop yourself as a person is amazing. But I think we also have to find time to do things that we enjoy. And I think that's the balance that I'm trying to find at the moment, because I'm going into new coaching roles and stuff like that, which is an amazing opportunity. But it's about drawing it back and actually going, why am I doing this? And, yesterday I went to my first training and it was such an amazing time and made me realize why I'm doing it. But I think sometimes, we set ourselves up to do these roles without actually finding the time to do things we truly enjoy. And I think that's something that I just have to navigate, and everyone really has to navigate as they go through their journeys.
Yeah, it's so true, because we all do things because we're doing it for a means to an end. So, for example, you might be saying, hey, I need to study this. I need to do this because of my study. I need to tick up a couple of boxes. But actually, if you run right back and go, actually, I'm doing it because I enjoy it, not because of a certain accreditation or a document or a mark. It just changes the whole perception of how you look at things. And you're right. This happens not just as a student, but also through life, where you go, hey, I need to do X, Y, Z because I need to do X, Y, Z, as opposed to I'm doing X, Y, Z because I enjoy doing it. The other X, Y, Z, ABC will come along as well. So yeah, that's really, really powerful. For those of you watching the video, I'm wearing a cap today. Why? Because I had to rush back. There were no buses today for some crazy reason. All my buses were cancelled, so but sweaty, so that's why I'm wearing a cap. Otherwise, you'd see a pretty sweaty person. Those of you that are listening, you can avoid that. So happy days. My learning this week has been systems break. Systems break. And, there's a lot of times we just rely on systems solving everything. And we rely that, hey, if a bus is meant to come or a piece of software is meant to work, or if the mail is meant to come, we expect that to happen. And if it doesn't happen, then we get flustered and we blame the system and we blame that. And it's actually, for me this week, this was a step back and go, actually, it's not the system that's broken. And the system might be broken, but we can't blame the system. We should always have an alternative plan just in case. We become too comfortable in a life where we think everything's going to work. But we have to have our minds to go, if it doesn't work, what can I do? And there's no point complaining about things, because if you complain about things, it's not going to fix this. Yes, we can complain and rant, but that's not going to fix the problem. And sometimes things have to break for things to get better. We are so in tune to life to make things working all the time that if things are broken, we put a band-aid and say, right, cool. But it has to break and then things will change. So it's a learning for me to step back and go, hey, it's important for the systems sometimes to break for us to realize how much we actually need them, but also what are the flaws in the system. So that was my little learning this week here, in amongst all the other cool and crazy things that I've been up to this week here. But hey, as always, we always say this, Tanya and myself can keep talking forever and ever, but it's not about us. As always, we love to bring guests onto this podcast that we think are amazing and fantastic. And as for those of you that are our avid listeners, you know that every week we scour the country to find some people that we think are going to tell you a story that anyone can relate to, can find something to relate to. And this week, it is our absolute pleasure and honor to welcome Harry Averill onto our podcast. Harry, welcome to Baskets of Knowledge.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, fantastic. Harry, just for our listeners out there who know nothing about you, do you want to tell them who you are at the moment and where you are based in the country? I guess good place to start.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm Harry Averill. I'm 23. I born and bred in Hawke's Bay, and I went to university down in Dunedin, and I've been back for a couple of years now. So I'm just at the moment actually living with my parents. I flatted last year, but decided to save some money and move back with mum and dad. So I'm in Hawke's Bay. We've had a bit of flooding and things around here, obviously, but it's on the mend and it'll be a long road ahead. But yeah, we're a pretty strong community, and I'm sure we'll get there eventually. But no, that's where I'm at the moment. Yeah.
And thanks. That's a great way to start this conversation, Harry. Because for our listeners out there who don't know much about New Zealand at the moment, in the last week or so, or last 2 weeks, I guess, we've had a cyclone that's affected the country, and the Hawke's Bay, one of the regions in this country, has had a massive hit where flooding has affected some parts of the community and not others. But I guess, Harry, for you living in the Hawke's Bay, it's I guess watching the country come together to try and as assist has must be really awesome for you, just not the community, but also the rest of New Zealand jumping in and saying, "Hey, we want to do some fundraising to help our people or family or whānau who are going through a tough time at the moment."
Yeah, it is. It's really inspiring. Yeah. I think New Zealanders are known for it. Whenever there's a crisis, kind of jump in and everyone helps each other out. So yeah, as terrible as it is, it's also so positive and the vibe's so good around here. Just there's that whole belief that things will get back to the way they were before. It may take a while, but yeah, we're all in it together. And like the Christchurch earthquake, I suppose it's the city comes back differently, but Christchurch these days is awesome, and it took a while, but it creates the city rebuilds and ends up better than it ever's been before. So hopefully we can do something similar here. Yeah.
I love that because even in darkness, there's positivity. It's like because at the start, you can go, oh, you can complain about things being bad. Yep, but what's the positivity? All right, cool. This is a great time for you to for things to change and build a whole different kind of community, which is fantastic. Talking about you hit a key word there, Harry, the word inspiration. And why I'm going to pick on that word is because you're an inspiration to lots of people out there. For those of you that don't know, well, most of you don't know this, but Harry has actually published a book recently, and the book is called Hungry to Be Happy. And Harry, we'll start about that. So, what is the book about? And then we'll talk about your story.
Yeah. So in a bit of a nutshell, the book's about my journey through anorexia and mental illness. So 10 years ago, I started high school, and across a few months, I developed anorexia and ended up getting really sick, going to hospital in a psych ward. And that's pretty much the first half of the book is how I developed this illness when I was just a normal, happy, healthy Kiwi kid. And then the second half of the book is kind of how I managed to turn things around and get to where I am today as, happier than ever, loving life. So that's in a really brief summary. That's what the book's about. Yeah.
No, beautiful. So we're not going to go too much into the book because I want people to purchase the book and have a read and make you some money because that'll be great. But let's talk about the first part. So you said 10 years ago you went to school, you went to a boarding school, if I'm correct, and you were getting involved. Any young person getting involved in, like most schools, athletics is something that people do. And was that the point when things started changing for you? You get involved in athletics, and how was that a point for you where you go, hey, things start changing?
Yeah. So I'm not really sure why, but I arrived at a high school boarding school, and in my mind, I kind of thought that was when I had to start taking things seriously.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of thought it's like I said in the book, it's like a line in the sand for me. I thought my childhood was over. Start of high school, that's when I start having to work hard. I have to start building myself a success and a platform for a life. And um, so I arrived at school and I started doing everything to the best of my ability, whether it was academics or sport or anything. I just tried to do as well as I can, which is what we always get told to do. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but just as a consequence of that, I was obviously trying really hard and just happened to make it into this middle distance running team at the school. And from there, started having to do lots of training. And obviously, it was quite a high pressure environment. And with that mindset I had of trying to be successful, no pain, no gain, I just started trying really hard. And with that, as you can probably expect, I started getting faster, which kind of all seems positive. But the problem was I was also losing weight at the same time because I was doing all this training and I was trying so hard and I wasn't eating as much as I needed to be to keep the weight on. It was completely accidental. I had no idea it was happening. But through that, I I started getting quite noticeably skinnier, and from there, I kind of linked getting skinnier with getting faster in my mind, which may seem like a bit of a jump, and it seems kind of irrational, but at the time, it just made so much sense. You know, I was losing all this weight, yet I was getting faster because of all the training. So from there, things started kind of turning south. I started getting more and more obsessed with running. Um, the season, we got right into the season, had all these events and things, and I started putting all this pressure on myself to get better. While at the same time, I was kind of getting worse because I was becoming more and more unhealthy, losing weight, and also just starting to really battle with life in general. Because life's not that fun when your only focus is success. So across a few months, I went from this happy, healthy, normal guy to someone completely obsessed with exercise, essentially. And um, it didn't take long for my physical health to start deteriorating. And essentially ended up in hospital and was very, very sick. Um, but that's how it all started, really. I got into this running team, and like a lot of people, especially at high school, when you're going through all these changes, I decided that as long as I can be successful, everything else will work out. But as is often the case, when you kind of sacrifice your happiness and you focus only on success, it's only a matter of time before the wheels fall off. And that happened with me pretty severely, I suppose. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I think if we start at the start, that you mentioned that when you went to high school, there was a line in the sand, and I think it's not. I think this is something that I see with society or with cultures, that the expectation that when you go to high school, you just have to start performing. And even though it might be subconscious or conscious, it's all around us. And in some family situations or some life situations, when people go to high school, they go, "Hey, I've got to change. I can't be a kid anymore. I can't, I can't have a good time and just do things just for fun." And I appreciate you saying that, because we see this. I see this a lot happening where um, someone might not say it, but someone has the perception that this is what I have to do. And obviously, you fall into that, and I'm sure a lot of us fall into that perception where we have to. For some people, it's going into sports. And for others, it's academics. They go, "And I'm in high school. I have to forgo my play and I have to study all the time. I have to forgo my play and I have to do a sport." And I guess being a male as well, there's some certain expectations and perceptions out there that stereotypically you want to be. I want to be the fastest guy on the running team. Not sure if gender has a specific thing, but I guess in your case there might have been. So no, but it's across genders. And as you went through the journey there, what is it like for you at school? As you were getting faster, but in your class, did your classmates or your teachers start noticing that, hey, this is not okay. This is not healthy? Or was there, "Hey Harry, you're getting faster. We should just egg you to go, hey, I'm going to keep getting faster because people are actually acknowledging the fact that I'm getting faster."
Yeah, it was a very gradual process. So initially, obviously, it was all very positive. It was, Harry's getting faster. He's going up in assembly, getting these certificates and things. And as a year nine, someone who's just started at this big new school, that's really exciting. And like anyone, I felt pretty stoked with how it was all going. But then, very quickly it went the other way, and I started withdrawing myself. I started probably acting very strangely, just because I was becoming so unhappy. And I was mentally unwell. I didn't realize it, but from the outside, it probably would have been quite obvious that I was not myself. And that happened pretty quickly, really. So it was a gradual shift of me getting all these compliments and all this praise, and then kind of the wheels falling off, and suddenly I felt really isolated. And not only was I getting slower and actually not performing as well because I was losing so much weight, I was becoming so unhappy and withdrawing at the same time. So it was a really confusing time. But I think no matter how hard things were getting, I was just so obsessed with that if I worked harder, things would get better. So I thought, well, maybe I'm slowing down because I'm not working hard enough. Maybe I just need to push harder and then things will get better again, which obviously is so far from the truth. But that's kind of the mindset I had. And no matter what the results were telling me, I stuck to it and kind of, paid the price in the end. Yeah.
And it's crazy because, as you said before, the phraseology "no pain, no gain" is something as a young person, whether you're whatever you're doing, there's this phraseology: "no pain, no gain." Therefore, if I'm not in pain, I'm not gaining. So therefore, I should put myself in pain. That's okay. You read about that and you hear about that a lot of times, and it's thrown about everywhere. You see it at the gyms, you see it on t-shirts, and we all know that as there's a line where that's okay, and there's a line where that just goes off the charts. So you said this is a graduate post process. When was it from, hey, you were all good, and you ended up in hospital? How long was that, the timeline?
It was probably, so I started school in late January, I think.
Yes.
And then I was in hospital in start of October. So
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But for a lot of that year I was at school and I was functioning okay. I was able to go to class and things like that. But by the time I left school, which for people in New Zealand was the end of term 3, so that's when I left school. I was in hospital 2 weeks later, and then I spent that whole summer between hospital and the psych ward. So that's kind of the timeline. But yeah, for me, it was very gradual until the point where it wasn't, and
Yep.
from that point, I'd kind of gone too far down the wrong path, and things unraveled very, very quickly within a couple of weeks. So that's probably the scary thing about anorexia, is that it's very easy to hide it for a long time. But once your physical health starts paying the price, you can't keep carrying on. The heart needs energy to survive. So yeah, there was a point where I kind of, out of necessity, had to be hospitalized. Yeah.
And I heard one of your interviews, and I read somewhere that your mom basically said, "Hey, you're not okay. We're going to see a doctor." So obviously your parents, as everyone, we were concerned. And I saw, read, or remember hearing that when you had the diagnosis of anorexia, it was a bit of a relief that you actually now knew, hey, there's something actually not okay here, and it's got a name. A lot of times it's the unknown. We fear the unknown, but when you haven't known, it's a relief of a sort. But for you as a young person, or as a person at that point in time, anorexia is normally incorrectly always thought to be a female condition, you know? For you as a young person or as your family, was it like, wait a minute, this is so weird because it's not normally a male thing? And I think we'll talk about that as we go into this conversation. But at that point in time, what did that feel like for you? Or were you just like, hey, I'm so glad I've got a named condition?
Yeah, I was probably just relieved,
Yeah.
because for that majority of that year, I was just confused, thinking I'm probably the only one in the world having these thoughts and doing this weird kind of behavior. So to realize that I was one of thousands of people around the world who had the same illness, it was a relief, even if it was something that I thought only females could get. It was, initially just relief. As ironic as it is to be told that you've got a mental illness, it kind of helped me realize I wasn't going crazy.
Yeah.
Because although I was sick and I was unwell, I wasn't the only one who had faced those battles.
Yeah, and it's that whole it's so weird, right? You go, hey, they say on Monday you think you're going crazy, and then Tuesday you go, actually, wait a minute, I've got a label now, and it's also it's hope, isn't it? It gives you a bit of hope to go, hey, wait a minute, if it's not just me, then there's hope out there, as opposed to, oh, I actually have no idea what's going on. Now you're in your book you talk about near-death experiences as well. So your recovery is not obviously smooth. So you don't go, hey, I've gone to hospital, I'm going to be better in 6 weeks. It doesn't happen like that there. So I guess this is when the real battle started, when you were actually now in hospital going through your treatment plan. Yeah, do you want to talk about maybe some of those experiences that you went through as you went through your treatment plan, or whatever you think is relevant
Yeah,
to you?
sure. Yeah. So when I was put into hospital, I was there for a month on bed rest, and that was purely because they needed to feed me through a tube in my nose because I was refusing to eat. They had to get my physical health back where it needed to be, because essentially my body was giving up. I'd been running and exercising pretty much every minute of the day for so long, and before hospital, I wasn't eating anything at all really. So yeah, they were purely focused on getting my heart beat where it needed to be and things like that. And from there, once my physical health was under control, they transferred me down to Wellington, from Hawke's Bay to Wellington to a psych ward, adolescent psych ward. And from there, the treatment kind of shifted to actually to start dealing with the stuff in my head to try and get that sorted, with the goal being that I can eventually leave the psych ward and get back into normal life. So I was there for another 3 months, and initially it was really, really slow. It was meeting with psychologists and pretty much just spending all day, every day, trying to get myself where I needed to be. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. It was pretty horrible, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone being in a place like that. But it was where I needed to be at the time, and it did save my life. So as tough as it was the best place for me. And it was about probably in my second month in the psych ward that I flipped a switch, and I started. I went from recovering really, really slowly to all at once kind of having a bit of an epiphany and realizing what I needed to do. And essentially from that point on, things have just been onwards and upwards. And it wasn't that this epiphany came out of nowhere. There were lots of things that led to that point. But for me, the way it felt, it was kind of this realization all at once that this is what I need to do. I have hope I can get my life back, but it's going to be hard. But I suddenly had all the motivation I needed to do it. So from that point on, it wasn't easy. It was really hard, but I had that belief, and so that was the start of 2014. So pretty much a year after I started high school, that I flicked that switch and got my life back eventually from there. And probably 2 or 3 years after that, I was what I would consider completely recovered and completely back to normal, or even better than normal. So it's amazing the power of the mind, the depths it can go, into darkness, but then also just how quickly it can turn things around. And that's what my whole story has taught me. It's that there's such extremes that the mind's capable of, and I've kind of been lucky, I guess, to experience both of them. And yeah, I just appreciate life so much more now that I know how dark things can get. But having come out the other side, I'm so grateful. Yeah.
I love that, because I love how you say it wasn't, you speak about the light switch moment, but you also appreciate that it wasn't actually, it was the slow grind that happened. The slow grind that has to happen. And, whether we like it or not, it's those every day, whatever your psychologist was saying to you, whatever you're telling yourself, it all just builds up. It's like anything in life, the consistency, or it's a compound effect, and compound effecting works both ways. So, if you think about pre-hospital, your compounding effect was going to a negative direction, and when you went to hospital, the compound went the other way. And it's crazy how that happens in life, and it's really, really beautiful to hear how that's just changed you and that moment happened. But how long? So you were in October, you left school. Did you go back to school straight away after you were feeling much better, or did you hang back a little bit and then go back to school?
I gradually went from kind of going to 1 lesson a day for a few weeks to going to 2 lessons a day, and then slowly built it up. And in between there, I went to a place called Community High School, which is where students go who are, most of the time it's because of behavioural issues. They've been expelled or suspended. And it's only recently that people have started going there for health issues. it's pretty much like a short-term alternative to mainstream education. So I'd go to school for a period, and then I'd go to community high for the rest of the day, and that just helped me get back into a routine of being at school, and from there, yeah, just slowly transferred from spending half my days at community high to half back at high school to eventually all my time at high school. And just 3 months after leaving the psych ward, I was actually back at boarding school. So
Oh wow.
it was a very quick transition. And it wasn't easy at all. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, getting from no school at all to boarding again. But I knew that the more I could push myself outside of my comfort zone and be kind of forced to interact with people, no matter how bad I felt. And this probably isn't an approach I'd recommend, just because it was so tough at the time. But I backed myself to do it, and it somehow worked. Just being surrounded by all my mates, kind of all day, every day, I kind of learnt off them how to live life again. They were, 13, 14-year-olds living life the way 13, 14-year-olds are meant to. And I kind of learnt off them where I was going wrong and how I needed to approach life. So it was a gradual process at the start, but no, all in all, it happened very quickly.
Oh, beautiful. I appreciate how you mentioned it. It happened, but it was a challenge. It was hard because, like as you said through this whole podcast so far, things happen, but it is hard. It's not an overnight, hey, this is all good. And I think we need to acknowledge that, hey, when in any condition, it's not an overnight success story. It does take time, but also credit to you because it also takes some perseverance from you to go, I'm actually going to give this a go. Another version of you in another world might go, I'm not going to school. Another version might have gone, no, this is too hard, I'm not going to school. So appreciate that you actually had that, whatever you want to call the word, resilience or mindset or whatever it is to do that there, because it is challenging as you said. So now you're back at school, you finished up school and everything, you're back and healthy. Going to university now comes up as a year 13, and I'm guessing from your age of 14. Oh, actually, I'm going to go back. How did you think about now taking on sports? Because now you're back at school, you're back with your mates. Sports is still part of life, and whatever sport it is. How did your mind cover that or look at that there?
Yeah, so when I mentioned flicking that light switch in my brain, it was kind of that I realized that it sounds really deep, really, but the meaning of life wasn't to be successful. Like we try and be successful and achieve all these superficial measures because we think it'll make us happy eventually. And for me, it was like maybe one day in a couple decades, I would have had all the success and then I'll be happy and I would have arrived and then the rest of my life will be awesome. Which is obviously just the completely wrong way to look at things. So for me, it was realizing that happiness had to be the priority, not success. And if we're happy and if I could get my mind in the best shape possible, then the success, if it's meant to be, will follow. But that wasn't my purpose. So when it came to sport, I purely did it for enjoyment. I played rugby, cricket, tennis. Running wasn't something I continued doing purely because I didn't like running. So why would I do it? And I approached all sports for the social side of it more than the competitive side from that point on. And yeah, I loved it. The focus was never about being the best or being the fittest or the most successful. For me, it was all about just having fun with my mates. And that's an approach I've continued to have now. It's a chance to get outside, explore the outdoors. It's not a chance to push myself. So I know pushing yourself is good for some people, but for me, I've learned that it's really it's not the best approach for me. It's about making enjoyment the priority.
It's crazy. It's going to sound really, really terrible, but it's the truth. Some people chase their whole lives chasing success, and at the last one go, we needed happiness. Whereas you, at the age of 14, you had this revelation, but obviously you've had to go through darkness to get to that revelation. And some people, don't go to that until, for instance, when it's a bit too late. I'm going to use the word too late because, it's a bit like our working life. We have been conditioned to work till the age of 65 and then look for happiness after 65 and enjoy your life. And then you go, oh, well, now I'm getting sick and all that. So it's really, I love how you've mentioned that because what you've said is not just relevant to you, but relevant to anyone in life, that if you switch your pursuit to happiness as success, then quite ironically, success will follow when you're happy, right? It's a crazy irony, but it doesn't work the other way around. If you are searching for success, happiness doesn't follow. So I think that's a really, really beautiful share. So thank you for that there. I mean, it's awesome to see how that changed your perception when you were at school and you started enjoying the outlook and life and outdoors. And obviously now you've done this here and now you have the choice of going to university. Was there a fear now because you live in a region where you have to leave? As a family, was there a fear that, hey, you're sending Harry away further away now? Was there a fear that, hey, maybe I know you've done all the recovery, but was there a fear that this might come back for you, or was it, hey, we trust you, we believe in you, and you believe in yourself, and off you went?
Yeah, so I was really lucky to have a family that really backed me and believed that if I say I can do this, they completely backed me, and that went right back to when I said to them back in year 10, look, I'm ready to go back to the hostel, and all the doctors were saying, nah, he's not ready, it's not going to work, but they backed me and they let me do it. So it was kind of the same thing at university. I actually chose to go to Otago because it was the furthest place I could go. I wanted to kind of get away and spread my wings and challenge myself. So yeah, I made the choice to go to Otago, and I didn't really know what I wanted to study, but for me, I knew I always wanted to go to university. I was always really curious. So I kind of had the mindset of, like, I'll go to uni, try out all sorts of things, figure out what I like. And yeah, it's probably the best decision I ever made. Yeah, it was an awesome experience.
Oh, beautiful. And you studied commerce and science at the end.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, 5 degree changes later, that's what I came out with. Yeah, I actually, the first day of uni, I was enrolled in law and commerce, and I actually turned up to the first law lecture, and then was in the law photo, and never went back.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, so I did that. I tried BA for a bit, and then just stuck back to commerce, and then in my second year decided I'd try out psychology. So, and that was mainly because of what I'd been through, and I had this curiosity to learn more about the brain and how it all worked. So I did that, and went to the first lecture and loved it. So ended up with psychology on the science side and economics on the commerce side. And looking back now, it's just the perfect balance of my interests. So I kind of had to have all these degree changes to figure out that. And I think that's something that a lot of people are scared of, is they go to uni with one plan in mind and they stick to it. Whereas I kind of went in with the mindset of, I'll just try things out and figure out what I liked. And through that process of elimination, even if it is a bit more expensive and a bit more stressful at times, I now know that all these other avenues weren't for me. And that kind of gives me a bit of, it's satisfying to know that I'm doing what I like the most.
I love that because it's not just, hey, life is hunky dory. You've conquered this darkness and everything's all okay, handpicked, but no, it's not. You still go through exactly the same that everyone else goes through. I don't know what I want to study. I think I want to do this here. Should I change my mind? Some people change. Oh no, I can't change my mind because I've had in my mind from the age of 10 I was going to be a lawyer, but oh no, I don't actually like law. What happens now? The whole world comes crumbling. So it's really awesome to hear that, hey, you had the changes, which is the irony is at the moment this week, lots of young people are going to universities across the country and are facing this very, very question where they go to their first class and go, I don't like this class. What do I do now? Oh, I like this class. What do I do now? So it's really awesome to hear that, hey, you just said, hey, I don't like this, so therefore I can change. And it's okay to change your mind. And even though it might be a bit expensive at that point in time, back to what you said before, happiness trumps success. When you're happy with what you study, things become much easier. So you're doing at university. How long were you at university for with your study?
I was there for 3.5 years. So
Oh, beauty.
yeah, so started in 2018 and then left just after the uh halfway through 2021. Yeah. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I probably could have done it in 3 years if I'd known what I was doing from the start. But yeah, I spent that extra half a year and had a really good time. So um yeah, it's not something I regret at all.
Brilliant. And now I'm going to touch on anorexia and being a male. As you started getting older now, was this something that you started realizing, hey, actually there's a story here that needs to be told, not just your story, but the story that, hey, that it's not just a gender specific condition for females, but actually how did that navigate for you? Because you're doing a study, having a great time, and you've gone through this year. When did this idea of, hey, I need to tell my story come about?
Yeah, so for pretty much when I went back to school, I didn't tell anyone about it. I said I had this heart defect from doing too much running, and that was kind of my story all the way through high school. Even my closest mates had no idea, because I was ashamed being a
Yeah,
male to have had this female disease. Well, stereotypically female disease,
yeah,
and that kind of continued when I went to uni. I didn't really tell anyone, and yeah, it got to a point where I realized I'm in the perfect position to break that stereotype if I can share my story and kind of make it known that it happens to males as well. Then I can uh, really make a difference. So it took a long time for me to get to that point where I was comfortable enough in myself to be able to admit that I had anorexia. But yeah, having come to that conclusion that like I'm ready to share my story, I I started writing the book, and now that it's out and lots of people have kind of been exposed to it, it's definitely the best thing I've ever done. Yeah, there was such a need for someone who's a male to come out and share their experience, and I'm just so happy I've done it. Yeah.
no, beautiful. And when did this realization happen? Was it during university or later on after university or while you were at school? When was and why did you choose to write a book? And there's so
Yeah.
many ways you can do this here. So we'll go to when and then why a book.
Yeah. So when I was in year 13, near the end of the year, I made this speech in front of the school, pretty much uh, not going into massive detail, but admitting that I had a mental illness and that mental illness was anorexia. And this was at an all boys traditional school. So
Yeah.
that came as quite a shock to a lot of people. So that was when I first did it, and the reception was so positive. It was the scariest thing I'd ever done, but the reception was awesome, and all my mates were supporting me, and I kind of learned then that it's nothing to be afraid of to share my story, and that actually I can help lots of people through doing it. So that was my first taste of kind of putting myself out there. And then at uni, I didn't really delve into it much at all. Um, there at the odd time, I'd tell my story to my close mates, um, just because it came up in conversation, but I was never the one to raise it. Still, because I think I was a wee bit ashamed or embarrassed. And yeah, I'm probably not the most extroverted person naturally. So that all played a part. But then, yeah, I left uni and lockdown happened, the second lockdown in the end of 2021. And I couldn't go to work because it was a face-to-face job. So I thought, well, yeah, probably the one chance I'll have in my life to do something I'm really, yeah, do something that I'm really passionate about, and I don't have any obligations. I might as well try and get this thing down in words. So I gave it a crack, and uh, yeah, within a couple of weeks, I'd finished the first chapter, and from there, decided not to go back to work, to just spend 6 months trying to get it finished, and that took about 8 months in the end. But no, it was awesome, and it was hard some days to uh, go back to those dark places and remember what happened and piece it all together. But having got through it and finished the book now, it's just such a relief, and it's actually really therapeutic to get it all down in words. Yeah.
And are you a writer? So was this the first time you started writing, or have you always been a bit of a writer? To write a book is no mean feat. So was it something that came naturally to you?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a writer.
Well, now you are.
Like at school, I always preferred English and classics and subjects where there was writing as opposed to numbers. But no, I think I surprised myself, and I think a lot of people would surprise themselves if they sat at a desk for 8 months every day and tried to write. They'd be surprised how you kind of develop flow and you develop your own voice, and eventually it's never easy, but uh, you do get into a bit of a rhythm, and it gets a lot easier as you go. Um, so I did find that at the start, it was quite hard work, but as I went through the book, I became a lot faster and things came a lot more naturally. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm naturally a writer, but just through lots and lots of hours sitting at a desk, I became an okay one. Yeah.
The reason I ask that question is because it's just a thread that I'm trying to follow here. Is you a lot of things that you've spoke about is it's not been easy for you. It hasn't been easy. You from the start when you were the running, when you were in hospital, not eating, going through psych, and then the speech was not easy for you, but you did it. Going to all that is so. What I'm trying to say to our listeners out there is it's not just an overnight thing. It is a challenge, and if you stick to it, something will come out of it. And you've stuck to it for 8 months. I mean, 8 months is a long time, but also a short time. Whichever way I look at it. And do you want to share your process? Did you have a process? Did you how did you I've always thought about this because I'm also trying to write a book at the same time, and I always I struggle. Did you ask for help from other authors, or did you speak to people and say, "Hey, what is the best way?" Or did you just go, "This is my way. This is the Harry way to do it. I'm just going to go and give it a crack."
Yeah, so I'll just say on your earlier point, how there's been lots of things that have been hard, but I've done them. Um, never throughout, like since I've been well, these hard things that I've done, um, I've always made sure that I kept my happiness in check. So
Brilliant.
although this writing process was hard, if it ever got to the point where it was making me unhappy, I would have stopped. Because I've kind of learned that it's all very well kind of having the odd day of work that's challenging, but if you're doing it day after day and it's making you unhappy long term, what's the point? So throughout all the things I've done writing this book, that was always my priority, keeping that happiness in check. And if I wasn't feeling it one day, I'd just have the day off and relax and get my mind back where it needed to be. So that's something that I wanted to point out, because the whole message is to put happiness first. So although it's hard, it was kind of enjoyable as well. So and if it wasn't, I wouldn't have done it. So yeah, my process was probably not the right way to do it. I probably wouldn't recommend it, just because I was kind of clueless to how one actually writes a book. I just sat down and uh, had roughly a chapter plan, what I'd get through in each chapter, and just sat at the desk probably 5 or 6 hours a day and just tried to get it out into words. And I did a lot of it actually walking around the house, because I found that it flowed better if I was walking and kind of talking into a microphone or whatever. But no, I didn't have any set routines. I just got up at a natural hour and went to bed at a natural hour and wrote when I felt like writing. And eventually that all worked itself into a book. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. The reason I ask that question is because when you look online and you go, everyone has a process that they have to follow a process, and sometimes when you don't follow the process, you feel guilty. Like, oh, I'm not following a process. So I'm glad you shared that. But also, I want to acknowledge that you are acknowledging the fact that you weren't doing it because you had to do it. You did it because you wanted to do it because it's still there was happiness involved. It wasn't I need to tell my story because I have to. It's because I want to tell my story, which is a very, very different way of looking at things. And then when did you know it was done? When did you know, okay, I've done, it's now got to get published? What is that? When is that? Because you keep writing, right? This, how long is a piece of string? How did you know this is the moment that it had to get out there? And how did you know I now want to get it out there for the public to read? Because, as you said before, when you did your speech, it was the hardest thing for you. Now telling your whole entire story is a whole different ballgame altogether.
Yeah, well, it was once I'd actually finished writing the first draft, I didn't realize how hard it would be doing the whole editing and things like that. So I because I did it all self-published, so I sent it out to just a friend, one of my parents' friends who's published a few books, and then another lady who's an editor for a living. So I just got them to read through it and send me back their thoughts, and they sent me back with all this advice, and it was quite overwhelming at the start because I thought I'd finished, but then they were coming back with all these things I could change. But in the end, I just went through it and took some of their advice on board, ignored some of it, and it was a very long process. Just because you can read it over and over again and feel like it's getting worse. So I had to draw the line after a couple of months of editing and just say, this is the best I can do. And if I keep editing it, it's probably not going to make it any better. So I had to draw the line eventually. And from that point, it was all about just getting it out there and sharing it with the world. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. And what about so this is fantastic because like you said before, everyone's got points and opinions, and it's still your story. You want to keep it as your story because you can listen to everyone's opinions and the story changes from Harry's story to another person's story. And what is your thought process now around around mental health? Because mental health is massive in this whole journey here. And as you look at New Zealand, and we know New Zealand's got a crisis in mental health, especially with males. How do you see yourself? I'm not going to use the word champion because that's a terrible word. How do you yourself in your world, in your space, trying to bring awareness to I guess anorexia for males, but just generally the whole mental health space? Do you see yourself as something that you're passionate about, or you hope the book will bring that for you?
Yeah, so it's definitely something I'm passionate about. For me, the book is a way to raise awareness.
Yes.
And so if someone comes to me saying, look, I've got a son or a daughter with anorexia, I can give them the book, and that's everything I know, down in words. So that the reason of the book really was to just get it all off my chest in a way that other people can have access to easily, and it can be shared around easily. So, but more generally, I kind of see myself as just I'm passionate about sharing the idea that that recovery is possible no matter what mental illness you have. Like I personally, when I was in the midst of mine, I just felt so hopeless, and I kind of thought, this is going to be me for the rest of my life. I saw no future for myself, and I just couldn't even imagine the possibility of me being happy again. I thought it was all over. And I think that's so common with mental illness. Your brain kind of tricks you into thinking that you're a hopeless case. And it's so hard within that space to imagine anything being better again. So if there was one thing I'm really passionate about and that I want to share, it's that recovery is not only possible, but it's if you really believe in it, to the point where you're not accepting any other possibility, your life can be even better than it was before. So that's just something that if there was one message that I'd want people to know, it's that mental illness is tough and it's challenging, and it's probably the worst thing you'll ever go through. But if you do get through it, there's every reason every possibility that your life will be better than it's ever been before. Yeah.
I love that because, as you said at the start, there's two parts to your book: the part where you went through it, and the part which is what you spoke about, the recovery and how you are actually living that world now. And I love how you said if you believe that's the only possibility, then you can make it happen. Like you said, that the brain is a crazy thing. If you give the brain any doubt at all, the brain just latches onto that doubt there, even though it's not real. It just makes that very, very real. That's a beautiful share there. And another question I guess for you is, anorexia, has it made you more aware of how many young males in New Zealand are going through that, or is it something that you haven't really explored? Because like I said before,
Yeah.
it's more, normally a female stereotype condition.
Yeah, no, I've been amazed at the amount of people, whether they're counselors or parents, or the young males themselves, have reached out and said, no, this is me. They've thanked me for sharing it because they, like me, had no idea that it was something that could happen to males. So I have been surprised just at the amount of people throughout New Zealand, especially males, because I think the stats are 1 in 10 cases of anorexia are males. And there are a lot of cases of anorexia, unfortunately. So that does add up. And the worst thing about it is anorexia's got the highest mortality rate of any mental illness, just because there's that whole physical, the physical health is affected as well. And of those cases, unfortunately, the rate for males is higher than females, just because they're picked up a lot later. Maybe because of the stereotype, or I'm not sure, but by raising awareness, hopefully, I'm kind of doing my bit as someone who's got through it to try and change those numbers. Yeah.
No, and that's really fascinating for me because I didn't think about that. The mortality rate will be pretty high because it is also a physical deterioration of the human body. Like you said before, your heart stops functioning properly, and the mortality rate in males. Wow, that's fascinating and really interesting. And what about you now? So you've written the book, you're back, you finished university. What's in the cards now for Harry?
Yeah, so I'm notoriously indecisive when it comes to what I want to do, which is that's why I've changed my degree 5 times. But I'm trying to keep my options really open. I still don't know what I want to do exactly, but at the moment I'm actually doing the 1 year of teaching, training to be a teacher. Yeah, so that's kind of my focus this year, is just getting that qualification under my belt, and from there it'll just be a case of going with the flow. If I end up teaching, that's awesome, but I'm not planning necessarily to do it for the rest of my life. It's just something that I'm keen to try out, and it seems like it'd suit my lifestyle, so and suit what I'm passionate about. So I'll give it a go, and definitely not restricting myself to that, because as my experience has taught me, I'm very capable of changing my mind.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, right? And each thing that you're doing is giving you another skill set to add to whatever you end up doing, And again, there's no finite end to whatever you want to do. You can do whatever you want, really, essentially, And it goes back to the whole, I'm going to use the word system again, because that's what I brought up today. The whole systems we've been brought up is that you have to have a destination in mind for your goal. I want to be an XYZ. And as you realize that system is actually broken, we build a new system where you go, actually, you can change your mind, and it is okay to change your mind. So it's a great little analogy that we've come through from the start to where we are right now. So that's pretty cool. And hey, just saying, if you to become a teacher, I think you'd be a fantastic teacher. Just from this conversation we've had, I think you've got a lot to share with the young people. So if you to become a teacher, those in your class will be pretty lucky, I think, which is very cool. Very, very cool. And I'm just going to touch base. I'm going to just swing back a little bit and talk about your university experience just briefly. With the university experience, obviously you spoke about changing your mind a few times. That's fine. That's the academic side, which we're talking about. What about your personal stuff, the other side of university, which lots of people don't really talk about, is the actual growth that happened in all the different things you got involved in. What kind of things did you get involved in that was like, hey, this is actually pretty random and really cool, which I didn't expect would be this way? Was there anything that stood out for you?
Yeah. When I look back to who I was when I started university, I kind of thought I had everything all figured out, but now I look back and realize, I've learned so much since then and grown so much as a person, and I know myself so much better. And it's hard to pinpoint what happened necessarily to sort that out. But I I did lots of things. I in first year I did social netball and basketball um and just kind of did all the social sport I could and what they offered at the halls. And yeah, I'm not sure. I had a pretty awesome time socially. I That's obviously the fun side of uni, isn't it? It's the
Yeah.
whole social side and meeting new people and uh, meeting people from all around the country and um, having all these connections. So yeah, I tried to put myself out there, and I'm probably naturally quite shy, but throughout uni I tried to yeah, put myself out there and uh, figure out kind of who I was a bit more than I used to, and yeah, the whole process was awesome, the best years of my life. But yeah, hopefully the best so far. Hopefully there'll be better ones to come as well.
I'm sure there will be. What I love there is that, I asked the question on purpose because some people think that there's a particular moment at university where things are changing. But every single one of our guests that have gone to a tertiary provider has basically said there's no one moment. It just happens. These things just happen, and you just, like you said, you just learn about yourself so much more. And it's not the classroom learning; it's the other learning that you learn about yourself. And obviously, for you did some learning before, but this just takes to the next level. So that's beautiful that most of us share that journey. And Tony, you would have gone through that as well as you've gone through your 4 years.
Yeah, definitely. There hasn't been a one specific point, but there's definitely been learnings throughout the way. And I think that's something you take with you as you go through university, because I think when you start that new chapter, you think all the learnings are going to come at the start. And then, by second year or third year, you're going to have it down packed. But there were plenty of things I learned in my last year at university, which I probably could have learned a bit sooner. But also, sometimes learnings just come at a point in time for you.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong time. It just happens when it's meant to happen. I mean, I'm still learning stuff every single day. But that's because if you choose to learn, right? And like you said before, Harry, I think what you said before is if you choose to tell your mind about something, then that something is more likely to happen. But if you just say my learning is going to stop because of X, Y, Z, it's just going to stop because you've told your mind that, and the mind just picks those things there. So that's that little piece of wisdom that you said there, Harry, has just stuck with me quite a bit. So thank you for sharing that there. We've been speaking for almost 45 minutes to close to 50 minutes. And I guess, Harry, we'll start wrapping up the podcast. And the way we wrap up the podcast is our podcast is called Bosses of Knowledge. You have shared some amazing pieces of knowledge today through your journey and just through the revelations that you've had. But if there was one piece of knowledge that you love our listeners and I guess ourselves to think about to put into a Bosses of Knowledge, what would you like to share?
Oh, that's a tough one. I guess I'll go with probably the main message in my book, because that's, I guess, that's probably the key learning I've learned of my life so far, is that main message in the book. And that's that the point of being here, alive, is to get as much happiness out of it as we can. So yeah, the way I look at it is we've got this life across 80 years, I guess, on average, and we can get as much happiness as we can in all sorts of ways. Like, we can focus on maybe sacrificing 20 years at the start and hoping that that'll lead to happy retirement, or however you think it's going to work. But I guess what I've learned is that it's trying to be happy every day, and it's being happy throughout that whole journey, not sacrificing all your younger years in the hope that it'll make your older years happy. So that's kind of my approach to life, is just yeah, knowing that it's a long journey, this thing we're in, but yeah, there's no point sacrificing years in the hope of having better ones later on. You might as well enjoy things now.
I love that. It's a bit like YOLO, right? You only live once. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and if you add the word happiness in there, And if you find happiness every single day in whatever you do, even if it's 5 minutes a day, just happiness it probably makes you feel better, and it probably will make you live longer if you think of it that way there. So that is beautiful. And I love that that's the main message in your book, which is beautiful. Talking about your book, where can our listeners get a copy of your book if they were interested? And they better be interested.
Well, if you're interested, it's at harryaverill.com, and you can get it. You can get it through the website there, or you just go on Amazon and you can get it in ebook or paperback. So yeah, those are the two spots online that you can grab it. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. So yeah, jump online, guys. It's a fantastic story. Jump online. It's there's so much to gain from the story, not just for yourself, but even people that are around you. Tana, any last words from you?
No, mainly just thank Harry for coming onto the podcast and sharing his story. I think a lot of it has resonated with me, and I think also, just the time of year where a lot of students are going back to high school or moving into university or moving into a new chapter. And I think this whole idea of you talking about this pursuit of happiness, I think resonates quite well, because as you go into these new years, you always want to, try something new and strive for success, but it's also just going back to what actually makes you happy. And that's, as you say, it's more important than any success. And if you are happy, that success will follow you. So I think it's the perfect time to open these conversations and have these conversations. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will take that with them.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm also going to talk about that one phrase you used to start with, the line in the sand. A lot of us, as we're transitioning different stages of the life of our lives, with sometimes the calendar, it's a new year, therefore it defines what I should be doing. But if you use your life being defined by those key, if it's a new year, or I'm going to high school or university or my first job or whatever, and those line in the sands change how you look at your life, but not in a positive way, in an expectational way, you're not going to be happy. So I love that phrase of yours there, Harry, the line in the sand. But if you blur that line in the sand, I mean, we should have some sort of line, but don't make it a fixed line. Put a couple of dots in there, or put of dashes in there, and add the word happiness in there. And whatever stage you are, if you keep that happiness as a front focus, it's important. And we're not saying you need to be happy every day. Like you said, Harry, before, you're not happy every single day in your life. You don't wake up going, yeah, life is fantastic, because that is not life. But if you find moments of happiness, that is probably more realistic than having happiness every single day. Because the fear that you want is people to go, I'm not happy every day, therefore I'm not healthy. That's not what we're saying. That's the opposite message. We're saying, hey, find moments of happiness, because there is moments of happiness around. And am I correct, Harry?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Life's not always going to be rosy, but I guess if you just have the intent, maybe not waking up every day feeling happy, but having the intent to be happy. If you can do that, you're halfway there. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. The intent to be happy is fantastic, as opposed to always trying to be happy. Beautiful. Harry, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story. We could keep talking for a longer time, because there's so much in your story so far. Thank you for jumping on today. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for just being yourself, which we've really enjoyed. And on behalf of Tyne and myself and Pass the Knowledge, to all our listeners out there, have a listen to this, have a listen twice, have a listen 3 times, because I'm pretty sure that you'll find something that will resonate, or that you could share with others around you. Until next time, don't forget to fill your past knowledge with something in the world. Till next time, bye everybody. Ka kite.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.